Generating traffic and sales can be a challenge for online merchants. But selling on the Walmart Marketplace puts your products in front of millions of customers who shop on Walmart.com. And right now, sellers who join Walmart Marketplace can save up to 50% on referral and fulfillment fees for the first 90 days. So get started today. Head over to marketplace.walmart.com/savings. That's marketplace.walmart.com/savings. Welcome to E-Commerce Conversations, a weekly podcast from Practical E-Commerce, hosted by entrepreneur Eric Bandholz.
What is going on, Internet? Eric Bandholz back again with another E-Commerce Conversations. Hope all is going well on the other side of the Internet. On the other side of the Internet from me, Lukas. What's up, man?
Kraken, how you doing? I'm well.
You doing well?
I'm just hanging out here in Vancouver, Canada. Yeah, man.
Yeah, we got a Canadian and a Texan sitting on a Zoom call talking some e-com stuff. Why don't you give our listeners a real quick 30-second pitch of what the heck you do?
Yeah, so I've been a Shopify, on the operator side, Shopify store owner builder since 2015, and all kind of culminated in 2020. I started a kind of click and mortar. We had a physical store in Vancouver and sold a lot online to North America, selling personal electric vehicles, so e-scooters, e-skates, one-wheels, electric unicycles, all the stuff that annoys you on the bike lane. My apologies. And we grew that very quickly, but honestly, I was just quite unhappy there, looking for what to do next. And we paid a bunch of money to get our site redesigned, and it was really slow. And in my journey to get a site speed optimization done for our Shopify store, I started peeling back the layers of the immense systemic corruption in the industry. And I got really passionate about it, and then realized there wasn't many, if any, good practitioners in the space doing good work for a fair price, and decided, this is amazing. This is my next opportunity. Started the Nice Agency 2023, and just been scaling ever since, just focusing solely on Shopify site speed optimization ever since. I'm loving every minute of it.
Do you guys work with, I guess, any theme, any template built by anyone? You guys can, roll your shoulders.
Yeah.
Roll your sleeves up and get in there.
Yeah. If I had some, roll them still up, just get the guns out. It's funny, actually, this is like just a great topic to start with in itself. Very often, I'd say 9 out of 10 times that we have a client that comes to us that has a non-native Shopify, not bought from the App Store. I don't want to call out any of the third-party theme developer, marketplace companies, but the ones that you would go to, almost always, they are some of the slowest performing sites. They have great functionality, they look nice, but they load very poorly. It's very, very much the case that Shopify acts a lot like Apple does, where if you work within their tight ecosystem, things work a lot better. The second you start trying to pull in anything external that's not directly from their ecosystem, stuff gets quite hairy. I know that's from a performance perspective, but I've heard from other operators in different areas that that's kind of widespread across a bunch of different areas of Shopify's functionality. But yeah, we work on all the different themes. More often than not, when a client has a theme from X theme design company that's not from the Shopify App Store, our suggestion will be, let's build on a latest, greatest 2.0 version theme and kind of rebuild the site on that using all of our best practices, getting all the deprecated code out of there, and kind of starting fresh on a native Shopify theme. But we work on all of them.
Do you work closely with those theme developers as well? Like, we use Crown Theme for our website, and at this point, like, our theme is now a Beard Brand theme. We've hacked it up so much that we can't, stay up to date with their updates and things like that. But it would be really nice to know, if these theme developers are investing in site speed.
It's a hard one, man. It's kind of like being a car performance company trying to squeeze more, an aftermarket car performance company trying to squeeze adding a YSAC pack onto a German car, and then working with BMW to try and make their cars faster, right? It's like they make them well, they make themes well. It's not normally, particularly when we're talking like native 2.0 Shopify themes, at their core, they're pretty performance centric, right? Like, they're fast enough. It's all of the apps and the custom functionalities that clients like yourself probably want to build on that gets tacked on top of the base of the theme that really makes stuff starting to get slow. So when you think about it from a perspective of working with developers, there's always things they can do. I've spoken and continue to speak with the heads of performance, web performance at Shopify, and some of the top ups there. They're very focused on and very aware of how important site speed is and making their core themes faster and faster and faster. But I mean, when you're serving millions and millions of different stores and you want to have that a beautiful functionality, the plug and play ability that Shopify has, it's very much a double-edged sword where every app you download, you're gaining cool new functionality that will hopefully increase your conversion rate, your overall user experience, lifetime value, average order value, all the things you download apps for. But the other side of that sword is it's more scripts to download. They're not being loaded in the most efficient way. There's inefficient code being bundled into the rest of your site. There's really poor apps that people download that hear really good things about that are very popular, big apps that slow your site down tremendously. We can get into like, without naming any names, just going into like industry, like different niches of different Shopify apps, I can kind of help highlight what the biggest performance killers are. That's always a good thing to help people understand.
I found like chat bots seem to be, or chat windows. What do you call them? Just
chat. Yeah, bots. Yeah, chat windows, like a customer support software.
Those seem to
those can
put
be
a pretty big hit on it. But
those
what
can be pretty bad.
industries? I mean, when you go in and you're doing an audit or improvements, is it coming down to be like, hey, do you need this app, or is this do we need to cut it, or are there ways to actually install it to improve the performance and keep the app?
Yeah. So this is again one of the double-edged swords is that you download an app and pretty much every app in existence in the Shopify space is third-party code, right? Like you can't edit the core code. That's the functionality of the app itself, right? They don't want you messing with that. So that level of customization is dropped down so that it plays better with the overall Shopify ecosystem, but so it fits better and it works better and it's seamless and smoother for people that are non-technical, which is the vast majority of Shopify store owners. However, then it, like, to answer your question, no, you're not able to really go in and mess around with that stuff. So there's certain situations where, say, like a client is one of the big killers is A/B testing apps, right? Because they're serving pages, full pages built out on top of Shopify. There are certain apps that render those pages on their own third-party untouchable servers and then re-render them on your page. So essentially they need to be rendered twice before the client sees them, for the user sees them. And then there's other apps like I'll call it on the bright side, like Shoplift, that render those pages natively on Shopify. So they're only loading once, thus are loading up to twice as fast. And so that's a quick, easy win. One of the first things we do, in fact, the first thing we do when we sign up a client is I go into their app list. We do an app audit sheet where I just build a spreadsheet out with links to every single one of the apps that they have. And it's just keep, remove, or undecided. And they go through, and even before we start getting into like replacement of this app with a more performance-centric app, even before, some very large companies that we've worked with doing, millions a month, they've filled out that list and deleted 10, 15 apps. So it's sometimes the fruit is so low hanging that it's just, we pull out those 15 apps. That's a lot less scripts that are loading into every single page. And with most Shopify apps, you download the app, it's going to load on pretty much every page as well, even if it's not needed or really used on that page too. So it's just a lot of nuance in that area, but also just there's the immovable aspect of certain apps. If they are integral for your site and you definitely know that you installed it and the user experience improved, your conversion rate, everything got better, but the site speed got hit and there's nothing we can do about it. It's just like, that's just the trade-off that you have to take sometimes. Sometimes, like I said, there's apps that do the same thing, but are far more kind of performance focused and often the same price or less. So it's kind of a win-win. The only downside being the client and the team need to now learn a new user interface and kind of sometimes rebuild their flow that they had from that app into the new app's UI, which is kind of annoying. We try to avoid it, but most of the work isn't so much app focused as it is just removing so many times you remove an app and a bunch of code will stick behind from that app. So removal of deprecated code, removing of JavaScript dependencies, CSS styling. Images are a huge thing, right? Clients would just often just load in poorly framed, super high quality JPEG images. So putting them in the correct formats, and it's it's very, I hate to, it sounds like such a marketing term, but it's so kind of bespoke for each client. There's no kind of, churned out process where it's just like, oh, we'll bring them through the ABCD. There's obviously the the common nuisances like we've mentioned, but there's just so much that kind of expands beyond it that my development team handles.
Yeah, I was going to add on. I'm glad you mentioned it, but like you can go through and just quickly like click on the unsubscribe or delete app, and then you look into the
Mhm.
code, and it's still like in the footer of your, liquid.theme or whatever it is.
Still
Um,
holding up everything. Yep.
yeah, and it's just like, man, they're like little barnacles, and you really need to be a detective to find like all the little pieces. And if you're doing
Yep.
this like a long enough period of time, like you are going to accumulate things. You are going to forget about things that you installed. There will be kind of like trash code
Yep.
that is
Yep.
left behind and needs to be cleaned up. And sometimes it helps to have that third party come in and ask you about what it is. Let's go into those high performing apps that you talk about. So, do you have a recommended? Now, it's not to say these are the best apps or the ones that you should go with, but they're more from a site performance perspective. When it comes
Yep.
to subscriptions, what would you recommend? There's Recharge, there's a Loop, there's I don't know all the all the apps out there nowadays. Bold, I think has
Yeah,
a
I'll be
subscription.
honest with you. Out of the dozens of clients that we've done app switches for, where we've had to, in the instances where we've had to swap out apps, not one of them have we taken out a subscriptions app.
Okay, so that's
So
not a big
we've
issue.
never, it may be an issue, but it's never one that my team's highlighted and brought to me and said, listen, this is systemic to the performance of the site. We need to get this one out. We've worked on, there's instances with apps like that, or say a perfect example is I'm working on a site right now, or my team's working on a site that is using Rebuy for product recommendations. But as I'm sure a lot of people that use Rebuy will attest to, it can have its issues with either like you know things coming up skewed, or just kind of, it can be buggy at times. And that's honestly across all of those kind of upsell product recommendation, cart booster, whatever that niche is called. All of them, after sell, all of them, they have their own issues. But we're having a situation right now where the client is facing a lot of buggy issues with their rebuy cart recommendation. Bought this, you'd love this product. And they were on a 1.0. So we're doing a full rebuild to a 2.0 theme. And we're building that functionality natively into their store. So they're really only using rebuy for that. So they can take rebuy out. We build it in natively for less than the cost of half a year of rebuy. And then they get the same functionality. It's all beautiful, straight lines, clean, and they have, using now the search and discovery app, they can still use the kind of AI product recommendation that Rebuy is kind of predicating that technology off of, and they can also go in and manually add suggested products into certain PDPs that they want to as well. So sometimes the answer is just like, one, can we build this out natively? Can we build this function natively into just by writing some code on the store? If we can, do you have the appetite and budget and scope to do that? If both of those line up, the easy answer is just, if you can build something natively into Shopify and the cost isn't insane and the scope of the project isn't wild and you have an appetite to do it, do it. Always do
When
it.
you
So
build out your, let's call it like your custom upsell app, is it built as an app or is it just built into like the theme?
directly into the theme. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. We don't build any apps. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
So
Keep
there's
it keep
no.
it simple, stupid.
Okay, but you're talking about we effectively do the same thing ourselves. We have like native recommendations, and hit
Yep.
a number of items. We have the toolbar and stuff like that. A lot of themes
Yep.
offer those things natively in the shopping
Yep.
experience. So, how much would an e-commerce brand look to invest in that type of native functionality for upsells in particular?
It really depends on so like the specific project that we're talking about, it was on top of a big rebuild where they had already paid, a 5-figure budget, low 5-figure budget, just like entry, just a bit over 10 grand to get that kind of rebuild done. And so this was just kind of a favor price to add it
Okay.
on for her. And we did it for 2 grand to build out that kind of whole functionality and add a bunch of the products that they wanted to the specific pages, which is just, some tedious manual work to add all of those in, and some training on how to utilize the new functionality they have going into 2.0 with search and discovery to be able to do that themselves as well. But that could range to a lot more depending on what kind of functionality you're trying to build in.
Okay. Now let's keep on going down the list. Like customer support extensions. Do you have an app that you recommend from a site
Again,
perspective?
customer support. So I'll say this, and then we can just kind of go from there. The big killers are that the ones that we're constantly saying like, hey, we need to look to replace this, or if you're not using it that much, just completely take it out would be a best case scenario. A/B tests, review widgets, of which
Really? Review widgets.
review widgets, because like review widgets to kind of monetize, they add so many little add-ons, right? Like pretty much every review widget now, like one of them, I don't know who was the first, Stamped or Yotpo or whatever, just started adding a bunch of different functionality. Almost always the review widgets too. Anytime we've made a switch, it's just brought on different issues as well. So it's just kind of like pick your pain. And I don't have any suggestions for the best one. Yotpo seems to do quite well. But A/B testing like IntelliGems, I've heard from the team, and I know that they're really focused on trying to make speed a more important thing, but the immovable fact is that they are, that double rendering where Shoplift and I have a great relationship with Shoplift. We've moved many clients over from really any other A/B testing tool to Shoplift, and they've seen a big reduction in their start render time, just dropping immediately from say 3.2 seconds to 1.5 seconds, just like that. So it's an easy way to shave a lot of time off. I don't want to sound like a Shoplift evangelist, but the team is amazing. They're like a young, lean, hungry team. The CEO very often talks to clients directly. They're super attentive. Their support team is world class, and they're really focused on performance and building the functionality from there. You still get all that same kind of stuff you want from an A/B test, unless nothing's been too complex for any of my clients that are like, Shoplift doesn't do this. Maybe there is stuff that they do, but I'm very single track tunnel vision
And
on
I would
performance, and
even
they crush.
argue if you're listening to this and you're doing, I don't know, under $5 million of revenue on your online store, you probably don't even need to be doing A/B testing. I know there's probably some CRO people out there who are like turning in their grave.
Yeah.
But like at the end of the day, like
Rest in peace.
try to use common sense. Try to like buy from your website regularly. Try to like browse your website
Yep.
regularly. And then
Yep.
just keep an eye on your conversion rates. Make changes. Don't be afraid to make changes. And yes, it's not going to be, as scientific to do a pure like A/B kind of test, but you
Yep.
are able to measure and analyze over time if things are generally getting better or worse. And you don't have to have that expensive software in there, and you
I
can move quicker.
very
You just
much
go with
agree.
your gut. So it's like if you're Amazon, A/B test out of everything. If you're
Certainly.
Apple,
Even like even like when you're getting into the multi deep 6 figures a month, A/B testing, when you're really like you got a strong marketing team, you're testing incessantly. Sure, an A/B test, but really like understand that no matter what A/B test you run, every one of these like another really big one is like heat mapping tools like Hotjar, Lucky Orange. Heatmap.com is newer and has some strides to make as far as kind of like overall experience and functionality, but they're another really hungry team that's growing and building fast with performance as an integral focus of what they're doing. So they're great, but at the same time, it's to your point, right? Like, do you really need it? And that goes to a more salient kind of foundational point of the whole KISS thing, right? Like keep it simple, stupid. It just very often the clients that we see with the most dramatic performance impacts, like, of course, I'm not going to name them. We have a client right now that we're doing an optimization for, and their product page, the main, largest contentful paint, the main, image, if you will, the main visual asset, if you will, rather, on their product page is a super high quality, like 45-second video selling the product. It's the first thing that loads, and they have 6 different, like, upsell, conversion rate optimization apps attached to their product page, and their A/B testing. Their largest contentful paint, their main visual asset, their whole page is loading visibly, is the best way to put it, in 25 seconds.
God.
Which is staggering, as I'm sure you know, to most people's, just like to help you understand, kind of a good, like, Shopify site speed gold standard is like below 3 seconds, right? You're going to be ahead of the vast majority of people if your product page main visual assets are loading and interactive within 3 seconds or less. So disgustingly higher. And there's a lot of clients that are doing millions a month that still have that LCP, those main visual assets, loading in 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14 seconds. And it's almost always just before we even get into the code work that my development team does. It's just looking at it really from like a very staggeringly simple perspective of like, okay, well, you're loading a heavy video in here. Take the heavy video out and just load a single high quality image, right? Like on your homepage. There's also a lot of strong research to point to this, that a static image with good copy and a clear call to action is the highest converting on average asset compared to carousel or high quality video. Of course, there's outliers, but it also plays best to site speed performance, right? Like if you were to download a heat map or a tracking tool, you would see that very few people watch the video for more than, a couple percent of its entire length, and very few people click over to different images on a carousel. They're only looking at essentially like the static image, if you will, of whatever you end up showing them. And anything other than a static image, well optimized image on that homepage, on the hero, everything else is going to impact your performance. So you're losing on both fronts, right? Like data shows that you're not going to convert as high compared to that static image, so you should already do it. And then from a performance perspective, it's going to be the fastest as well. So it's just like win-win. So that's another just like little tidbit. If you have your site, test taking out any carousels or videos and just put on a static image with good copy and a clear call to action in the button. Test that out and see what your conversion rate does and your performance does just from that alone.
Yeah. And then these, like, I haven't shopped it recently, but I haven't seen an A/B software for under $1,000 a month. So it's like,
no, they're like $250 a month for, I think it's like $250 a month for the kind of the ones I had mentioned, and then the enterprise ones are, I think, around $499 or $500 a month, and then companies like the kind of like extra bougie ones like Convert, I think, go up further from there, and I'm sure they all have kind of higher cost ones, but we're still talking like $3,000 to $7,000 a year, where unless you're really pulling a lot of tangible data from that and consistently testing, I find more often than not, too, in my experience, the vast majority of my clients, even, higher selling clients doing millions of revenue a month, they're very often like, oh, we say like, oh, what do you, first thing we'll ask, right? When we see an A/B testing tool, what are you using this for? How often are you using it? If it's Shoplift, we'll just kind of leave it be if they're using it a lot, but we'll still ask, even if it's a tool like Shoplift, like, how often are you using this for? What are you using it? Almost always the answer is, oh, we used that for some tests we had a while back, or with a marketing agency. Like they're not even utilizing it. Or we used it for one page just to see. If you're not, like, to your point again, if you're not using A/B testing a lot, and seeing clear, tangible benefits from that testing consistently, take it out. Take it out and just follow basic core principles. I think it makes a lot more sense to just hire a really good CRO agency to just do an audit for you. My preference, who are also, I'm biased because they're partners in my business, which is audit.co, oddit.co. They're amazing. And they just focus completely on conversion rate audits. So they'll just go through your site, say, this is, here's a full report of all the different things we suggest. And then I don't know if they've mentioned this, but they're starting to do the actual development for it as well, instead of referring to their trusted partners. But getting an audit done is like a couple $1,000 or not exorbitantly expensive. And you get the same thing you're looking to get from an A/B test, right? You get that like, this is what data has shown is going to be your highest converting things.
I think there's just like general best practices in e-commerce that people who do this all the time are just going to instinctually know. Like white websites perform better than dark colored websites. So, like beautiful photography, like spend that $5,000 a year and upgrade your photography.
Hmm.
You know, like
Good copy.
right, right as a human would read it. You know, like focus on your copy and stuff like that. So it's what happens is if you're an entrepreneur, especially if you're new, you're going to be getting emailed from people all the time telling you, hey, here's an opportunity for growth. Hey, here's an opportunity for growth. And they're going to throw like case studies after case study talking about how, this major brand installed our app and then now they're making $20,000 or more a month. It's all bullshit. It's not to say
Yep.
that there are people who use these apps and take advantage of it, but mostly the success people have in e-commerce are from great storytelling, great products, and ads that are able to convert. And then from there, all these other brands just kind of tag along and take credit for really like the brilliance of the CMO or the chief marketer of a brand,
Yes.
in my opinion.
I totally agree. And this is one thing I will fight tooth and nail to not do with this. I'm like a very much an anti-agency, right? I come from the non-technical founder perspective. I was building stores on Shopify for 5 years before I got into this side. And one thing I hated more than anything was even when we worked with a great marketing agency and then we're maybe working with another, a bunch of different apps and groups of people that were trying to provide us a certain value, all of them are fighting over attribution, right? No, it was us that created that bump. It was us that created this bump. It was pay us for it. You pay us for it. And with me, and I take it or leave it. My perspective with site speed is just, listen, we're going to go in and make the site load as fastly and as smoothly as possible. A lot of very strong data points to that increase in conversion rates, average order value, customer lifetime value, reducing bounce rates, just a general overall user experience improvement. Sure, you can look at the data. There's that. We can link it in the description of this, or I can send it to you. Or we can go through it wherever you want. But there's a report from Deloitte and Google called "Milliseconds Make Millions." It's an amazing culmination of a mountain of study on the impact of site speed to a bunch of different industries. And it's a great read for anybody who's kind of curious about like, is this really work? But even if you just think about it from a psychological perspective, right? Like particularly if you're running a lot of cold top of funnel traffic and somebody's in their scrolling mode and they're getting instant videos, instant images, everything is just smooth on whatever social media platform they're on. And then you do a great job, or your marketing team does a great job of creating some compelling ad that is compelling enough for them to click off and exit that immediate dopamine hit cycle that they're in. And already just moving from, say, a Meta platform to your site, there's already going to be that like 2 to 4 second delay while their browser loads up and then moves over onto your page, right? There's always that kind of blank, wait. Okay, now your page starts parsing. That time in between, so they're already breaking up their immediate kind of dopamine hit. And then if your site takes another 7 seconds on top of that to load for the main visual assets or the product page that you're bringing them to, it's way too much of a break. It seems minuscule, particularly for maybe people like you and me that are understanding of what this takes and are like, not people just clicking on ads like crazy mindlessly. But the vast majority of people consuming and running in top of funnel traffic, they want things immediate. So my goal is just to make that transfer over to whatever page you're trying to get them to as smooth and seamless and snappy as possible. Whatever conversion rates and sales metrics bumps that brings, fantastic. But you'll never hear me being like, okay, well, we caused a 18% conversion rate bump. Let me get 5% of that. Or it was us. It was totally us. It was everybody, right? You have a bunch of people working for you to make that better.
At the end of the day, your goal as an e-commerce operator needs to be like, how do I improve the experience that my customers and potential customers have? So a quick loading website is one of those things. One of the things that's out there are people looking for like cheap, I want to say cheap, looking for quick hits on site speed. And there are apps out there that promise, you install their app and then instantly their website is loading quicker. For example, one of those brands, I don't know if I want to throw the brand or not, but if you go to Lucas's Twitter profile, you can kind of see a deep dive that he's done into this. But give our listeners a real quick rundown as to what to look out for when it comes to installing apps for speed optimization.
Okay, this is like the meat of the conversation. So I want to lay a bit of pretext before I go into mentioning any brands in particular, any SaaS platforms, services, anything in particular. So how I got into this industry is we had just relaunched our website for evs.com and we paid six figures for it. It was a very expensive 6-month intensive rebuild of the site. We way overpaid, but that's neither here nor there. Got this site rebuilt, and I already knew that site speed was important back then. This is far before it was anything to do really with my world, but I was, co-founder of the company and was on top of all this stuff. So I checked our site speed. It was very slow. Most importantly to me at the time, I looked at pagespeed.web.dev, right? Google PageSpeed Insights, and our mobile performance score was in the red. It was really low. So I freaked out and I called these guys and I'm like, the guys that developed our site, I'm like, hey guys, we have this really bad performance score. Can you do a quick optimization for us and just, kick that number up? We got to get these numbers up. And they were like, well, Lucas, it's not that simple, right? This is a, pretty intensive project. It involves a lot of custom coding to make these things run a lot faster. It's going to cost you insert 5-figure number, and it's going to take 5 to 8 weeks to get this project done. It's not going to be easy. And I'm thinking like, what the hell is wrong with these people? And we'd already paid quite a bit for the site. So we were already kind of thinking like, gosh, they're just, kind of hacking at us here for price. So I'm thinking like, this is confusing because I had optimized, you see a lot of quote fingers in this segment, but I had optimized my site in the past by going to fiverr.com, searching in Shopify site speed optimization, and go search for yourself. Anybody listening to this, go fiverr.com or upwork.com, search Shopify site speed optimization, and you will see dozens and dozens of trusted, 5-star, Fiverr recommended, whatever, developers that are doing site speed optimizations for $100, $200, $50, $500, some super cheap amount, and they're promising you 90 plus mobile performance scores, 95 plus desktop performance scores for your Shopify store overnight or within a couple days. So I'm looking at these two sides of what I've been offered, right? I've had those done on Fiverr before for other sites in the past, and now this trusted, very, 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 equitable brand that we just finished doing this huge, intensive, very high quality project with is quoting me, 20 times as much, 40, 30, 40, 50, 100 times as much as these people are charging me on Fiverr. So I'm like, someone's screwing me here. And like always in business, if it sounds too good to be true, it likely is. So I started peeling back the layers on what the hell is, how are they possibly able to get my site speed scores up to even like 70, 80, 90 on my Shopify store overnight. And I started learning about this systemic scam going on in the Shopify site speed optimization space. It happens on WordPress too, but it's easier to fully optimize a site and get scores up naturally to those high numbers on non-Shopify platforms. We won't get into much as to why. Just think about all the third-party apps being stacked on top. We won't get into that. I'll stick to the main point here, but just know that you cannot. It's near impossible to have a extremely high Shopify site speed score on pagespeed.web.dev for a Shopify store. Do not focus on it. Don't pay attention to it. Focus on the main visual asset loading, like the FCP, LCP, time to first byte, cumulative layout shift. Focus on those numbers. Get those into the green. You're good. The number will never be high based on a bunch of different factors that we won't get into. So I didn't know this at the time, and I'm sitting here thinking, what the hell? And I learned that what all of these people, every single one of those people on Fiverr offering that service for a couple $100 and bumping your score up into the high numbers, every single person, and tens of thousands of 5-star reviews you see of people that have gotten that service done, every single one of them have been scammed. Not a single one of them have had an actual site speed optimization done. There is a 0% chance that any of them, and I don't like speaking definitively, but I am 100% certain, particularly after another year of digging into this, that none of them have actually been optimized. What they do is they inject what's called a user agent cloaking script, or a variety of different methods to do this, but let's just focus on user agent cloaking. So they go into your theme.liquid and they inject a script that basically says, when insert site speed test website here is the user agent visiting our site, feed them this drastically stripped down version of the page. So instead of doing all of the hard development work that we've mentioned and going through an app audit review and taking weeks and weeks and dozens, if not hundreds of hours of development work to actually rebuild your site or clear out everything that needs to be cleared out and do the real development work, they just inject a script that redirects your page anytime it identifies pagespeed.web.dev, GT metrics, pingdom, viewing your site. It just redirects it to essentially a blank page. So I'd suggest anybody who's ever gone to Fiverr, particularly if it's recently when you haven't changed many of the visual assets on your page, go to pagespeed.web.dev. And if you have one of those crazy high numbers, put in your URL and look at the image that it shows. When you scroll down below the kind of core web vitals and it shows the image, I bet you anything, it's not going to show a full image of your site. It's either going to be missing buttons and logos or the product page, or it's just going to be a header and it's going to be blank. It's this crazy scam that's just been running incessantly, and Fiverr must know about it. I don't want to like get into whatever that word is when you're defaming. I don't want to get into like defamation with Fiverr, but like they must know about it. They're a smart team of like hundreds of developers. They have to know this is happening, and we're doing a video on that separately. But this is a pervasive scam that's going, and it's not just these like $100 developers too. There's I think it's a w3speedup.com was another one I found that has dozens of case studies, and every single one of them, they're like, check out the live speed score, it's 98. Every single one of them, either the site's not live anymore or it's got that user agent cloaking going on in it. So my mind was just like blown when I saw this. It's like, wait, this is all a scam, and I was scammed every time I got my site speed optimized in the past. Like, what the hell? And then I started looking for just like ethical site speed development agencies that work for Shopify. If I found one, it was near impossible, and pretty much every single other one I found was a freaking scam. And one more bit of pretext is you can spot these scams by a couple things. If they say it's a plug and play, click this install and your site speed is going to go through the roof, and they focus on your performance score for pagespeed.web.dev, huge red flag. If they promise scores even above like 65 or 70, or really even focus on site speed scores for Shopify stores in particular, big red flag. If it's a couple $100 for the service and they're offering like actual development work, huge red flag. If it's I don't know if I mentioned this already, if it's just like a plug and play tool that just gets it done, like the one we're about to mention, big red flag. There is no shortcut to a fully optimized Shopify store. Like there is no way someone can just clean your room in 5 minutes, right? You need to get into every nook and cranny. You need to remove all of the deprecated code. You need to remove JavaScript dependencies. You need to redo style sheets. You need to do full app audits. There's so much stuff that you need to do. There's no way that anybody could build a profitable business by doing actual site speed optimization work and charging a couple $100 or $1,000 or clicking something. There's just no, I don't care how good AI is right now, or even in 5 years, there's no way to just do that. So anytime you see those things, watch out.
That app, how are they doing it then? I assume they're not doing the same thing that the Fiverr people are doing.
So the app we're talking about, guys, is Nostra.ai, Nostra.ai, and I hadn't heard about them. I was focusing on that w3speedup.com. I did a video on them on my page. We found a couple other Shopify apps that were promising the same stuff, and we called them out. And it turned into this whole thing. By us, I mean, I also partnered with a far more technically brilliant person named Jake Casto from Proton Agency in New York City. And so he kind of provided the technical side, where I provided the non-technical founder's perspective of, like, I was the one that caught this stuff by just looking at it from a, like, again, like a keep it simple perspective. Wait, like they're promising these things. That's not possible. Something's fishy is going on here. Ask the right questions, dig deeper. It's a scam. And so I had a client of mine who was like, he had, many sites. He's a really well-known kind of influencer in the Shopify, Twitter, e-com space. And he's emailing me. He's like, hey, by the way, for one of my other sites, I'm looking at Nostra. We just installed Nostra.ai. What do you think about them? Just wanted my opinion on it. I hadn't heard about them yet. So I went to their site, and the first thing they're marketing is the main red flag that I just mentioned. Their old site, you'll not see it anymore because they completely changed it, which we'll get into. But their old site, when I first visited, like October, November of last year, was, performance score is everything. Get your performance score up. Performance score. Click this one button overnight. Your performance score is going to go up into the 90s. All of their case studies led with, Shopify performance score went up to 90, 95 plus. Happy clients. And again, it was that huge red flag of like, this is impossible. You can't do it overnight. I don't care what your app does. There's no damn way this is happening. But I couldn't believe it, because I'm like, these guys are like venture backed, New York City based, probably like tens of employees, still small, but like, a a sizable business working with really big players in the space. So I'm like, this can't be. So for weeks, I just was asking everybody and digging deeper and deeper into this. And I found Jake Casto, reading in the comments of one of their pages, kind of making a snarky comment about them being shisty. It says like, do you want to partner with me and do an expose on these guys? Because I think they're up to something. So we spent the next month and a half without them knowing, obviously, just like digging into everything about them. We had multiple calls with the heads at Shopify. I think they've all come out and mentioned themselves anyway. So I can say like Colin Bendel, who's the second in charge at Shopify on the tech team next to, I believe, Ilya. He's one of the technical advisors to Toby, the CEO. A bunch of other people from the Shopify team came on and consulted directly with the Google performance team to kind of collate all the data that we had brought to them. And they confirmed that everything we had mentioned was in fact true. So we had, the highest form of verification, validation that we could on all of our findings from this company. And after we were certain about it, we created a report, reached out to the CEO of Nostra, and we said, hey, just so you know, we're doing our next report on you guys because we found some pretty weird stuff going on here. We didn't tell them a thing about what we found, what we think they were doing. There was no like, oh, you guys are using user agent cloaking to inflate performance scores and marketing it on your website as your main component as why somebody would sign up for your product. We didn't say any of that. We just said, we're investigating you guys. Just wanted to let you know, we'll send the report to you guys before we go live with it. So you can write up, response, and we'll respectfully add that response to it. We didn't say anything about what we were working on. Within hours of us just telling them that we're investigating them, every mention of performance score improving or anything that would indicate user agent cloaking happening was wiped off their website, including their founder deleted every single tweet going back years that related anything to performance score. And he had multiple tweets that I have screenshots of course. We had receipts for everything before we mentioned them. We have screenshots saying like, performance score matters. Performance score is everything. All of those tweets just magically disappeared and are no longer visible on Twitter. And
so they were using user agent masking is essentially what they were doing.
Yes. Yeah. They're built into their system was user agent cloaking. And then on top of that, they were marketing that user agent cloaking, which they clearly know is not good and that Google hates, and that the what's his name? I'm blanking on his name right now, but the literal creator of the Lighthouse algorithm, the core test behind pagespeed.web.dev, went in this because this turned into a pretty like big thing for how small of a niche this is. This turned into like a multi-hundred thousands impressions kind of thing on Twitter, and it was their team fighting back, being like, no, we don't do any of that stuff. And they would never answer the question of why did you guys have performance scores as your core metric of success and your main selling point, and then the second we said you're investigating you, all of it got deleted and you haven't ever mentioned it. Can you answer that for me? I've asked their CEO and everybody on their team that question 20 times and have never gotten an answer for them. It was just this political dance around.
They're still around. Have they changed their business model at all or not? Or are they still...
So I'll say this, and
doing the same thing.
One, I haven't really checked in on them in a while because I've been busy just building the business and it was quite draining. I'm not a conflict. I'm extremely conflict averse, but one thing that I hate more than conflict is people taking advantage or misleading small business owners. So I was like, okay, I'll take this battle on. They tried to frame it as this like, oh, this guy is just trying to build his business off the back of our success and belittle us so that he can gain clients. It's like, I have no interest in negatively impacting any business that's doing good ethical work at all. I barely have an interest in going after companies doing sketchy stuff because it takes a lot of time and energy it took us months to create this report and interview all these people that I mentioned and create all the findings that we did, write out the report, edit it, find more, correlate all of our findings. It took so much time that I wasn't building my business. It paid out really well because I ingratiated myself heavily with the kind of e-com Shopify industry as a whole for calling this stuff out, and had literally hundreds of people message me being like, I knew it. I knew they were up to something, but we didn't have the time or the care to really like dive into it, but I knew it. To your question, there are things that they do. Their core kind of thing is edge computing. So they're basically caching your pages externally and then quickly caching their pages externally so they load much faster. So they're kind of like pre-cached on your site. But okay, I've heard directly from the top at Shopify that they hate these edge computing systems because, again, like I mentioned at the very start, any tool that tries to operate outside of the direct native functionality of Shopify ends up breaking stuff. And I'll say, without again naming any brands, some very large brands I've spoken with, in fact, one we actually mentioned in the report, they've had situations where they had Nostra installed and out of nowhere, their entire site just broke and they couldn't hear back from them. They didn't respond in time. It was 2 days before Black Friday. This happened for a very, very massive company. The second they clicked uninstalled or turned off Nostra, all the problems were gone. And I've had multiple clients since come in and say, listen, they were one kind of like shady. I don't want to get into like defamatory, but just their opinion, like it was just kind of a shady experience with them. They danced around a lot of stuff, and then once it got installed, a bunch of things went super weird. So I'm hoping that they're focusing on building a good product that actually improves load times. But to me, I don't care if they have the best AI-enabled Shopify site speed tool. One, there is no way, like I said, to just plug and play and solve all your site speed issues. So that's one thing. There are things you can add that make things a little bit faster if edge computing is done correctly. Edge Mesh does it way better, in my opinion. And for very large companies, they may benefit greatly from it. But the answer for 99% of Shopify stores is just to get a good actual manual site speed optimization done, remove as much heavy assets as they can from their site, only have the core apps that they need, and focus on a lean, mean running site. And these tools, Nostra and every other one of them, more often than not, cause more problems than they solve and cost for larger companies, even mid-figure companies, cost thousands a month, where 2 or 3 months of their monthly subscriptions is the cost of our optimization. And then for a fraction of the price, we can stay on and keep the site fast through actual manual optimization work, not some plug and play tool that just tries to solve it all with a click of a button.
Where is, so you posted this expose on your Twitter. What is your Twitter handle again?
It's I go by Lukas, IGOBYLUKAS.
Okay. And where can they learn about your business? What's your website?
theniceagency.co, just as it sounds.
There you go, guys. I think we could probably talk about this for far longer than
there's so much. There's so much.
Allotted.
As long as you guys know the red flags, like watch out for those red flags I mentioned. If there's anything, any podcast I go on, it's just like, if I don't care if you end up working with me or anything. If you want to talk, we can do a full free audit of your site and see what we can do. If we can't make it faster, we'll tell you. If we can, we'll tell you. Work together, we don't. But if anything, I don't care about don't go to Nostra. If you want to try them or you're benefiting from them, fantastic. And I hope you do. And I hope it's worth it. And I hope they succeed. I just had to call them out for doing the sketchy stuff we caught them doing. They've changed it. That's better than it was. But just if anything, watch out for those red flags when you're getting Shopify site speed optimization done. Look out for those big promise scores. Look out for those overnight fixes or a couple $100. Don't go to Fiverr or Upwork for this. Go to a trusted agency and make sure you're getting the work done correctly. And if you get any sketchy vibes from them, either get me to fact check them, and I'll happily do that for free. Lukas with a K at theniceagency.co. Email me if you have any questions or you want me to take a free look at your site, or just run away and find a reputable service provider in this industry. That's it. That's my last message.
Hey guys, this has been another e-commerce conversations. Hope you enjoyed it as much as I did. Cheers. Keep on growing.